Welcome to the Listen for Life Aphasia podcast. I'm your host, Genevieve, and today I have a guest, Christi Cornell. She is the executive director of the Capital Area Parkinson Society here in Austin. And I'm bringing Christi on to help you all understand more about resources that are available to you. Although this is a nationwide podcast, I'm highlighting resources and support that are here in the Austin area because there's probably something similar in your area. And knowledge is power. Being educated helps you stay in control and get the support that you need for your journey. So I will bring on Christi in just a moment.
Welcome to the Listen for Life podcast with Genevieve Richardson. Genevieve is a speech-language pathologist rehabilitating adults with communication challenges after a stroke or due to a neurological impairment. Get equipped with knowledge from experts in the field and professionals you need to know. We'll hear stories and experiences from others who are navigating life with aphasia. So, put your earphones in and take a walk outside. This isn't just a podcast. This is a community, a resource, and a support system. We're in this together. Do life.
Good morning, Christi. Thank you for joining me today.
Thank you. Good morning. It's good to be here.
I know it's early, so let's get our enthusiasm. I know. This is what we do when we're busy saving the world in other ways. So, Christi, you are the executive director at Capital Area Parkinson Society. Can you tell us a little bit about what CAPS is and your role in what all that entails?
I'd love to. CAPS is a 40-year-old nonprofit, turned 40 this year.
Yay.
We just celebrated. It was founded in 1984 by a family member of a gentleman with CAPS, and then so really a local effort to try to support not only people with Parkinson's but their care partners as well. We got our nonprofit number in the 90s, and the goal of the Capital Area Parkinson Society is to, one, help educate folks about Parkinson's and be a resource for when a diagnosis occurs, two, to support them, and three, to help people socialize and draw together as a community.
All three are so important, whether you have Parkinson's, aphasia, any other diagnosis. We need to not be alone. And I love that the support and socializing, as well as all the resources, are what you guys do at CAPS.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Tell us your role as executive director. What does that mean?
Well, I tell people I get to boss around myself. I'm the only employee. But what it means is that I develop and run the programming. And then as a social worker, I'm also very proud to be able to help support people. Most Parkinson's diagnoses happen after age 60. I started my career as a social worker in the late 90s. I worked initially in nursing homes. Then I worked for hospice. Then I worked in home health. And then I worked in in-home care. And then CAPS in hospitals as well, because when I started the job, it was part-time. So what I offer is over 25 years of well-rounded knowledge in social work community resources here in the Austin area. And then, of course, gaining knowledge about national resources as well, because most entitlement programs are for people 65 and older, like Medicare, Medicaid, that kind of thing. So when I came on, I really wanted to build up the programming around resources. So what that meant for CAPS was adding more supports for not only the person with Parkinson's, but their care partner as well, because I feel like they're just as important.
Absolutely.
They're equally important. So every time I open a new support group, I not only have one for the person with Parkinson's, but their care partners as well. It meant offering new resources like Shake Shack, which is our socialization and respite program. A big part of social work is mental health care. And you probably everybody's seen the stats that our older population is isolated. And so just really encouraging people to get out to socialize, and that really will add to quality of life and positive mental health. And then lastly, just those social services that are so important and tangible services to day-to-day life. Like, what happens if I need to apply, I lose my job and I need to apply for disability, or I need to go get insurance through the marketplace, or I need to know where the food banks are, really helping people navigate those resources.
Amazing. So how do you do that through CAPS? Is it you have to attend in person to learn about these resources, or how can others tap into those?
We have a website that's been around for a while, and it lists, of course, all of our different programs, which are our support group, our Shake Shack, and then I mentioned education as a key. Once a month, we have a meeting, which is a lunch and learn, where we have a movement disorder neurologist speak, or a physical therapist or a speech therapist, someone within the medical field, to talk about Parkinson's. So everything's on our website, as well as I developed a large resource list with both national and local resources for people to check out, which, hopefully can check just about every box. And then, of
Yeah,
course, I'm available. People call me all the time, or you can text me, and I've got this going on. What do I do? It's my dad, it's my husband, it's, my uncle. We're trying to figure this out. What do you suggest?
absolutely. I think that's wonderful. I love that resource book that you have. It's very comprehensive. So I've put up on the screen for those of you who are watching this, the website, but I will also add it to the show notes. So wherever you're consuming this podcast, the website will be available to you. So I really love this idea that you have about an aging team. And I want to preface aging by saying we're all aging. It doesn't matter where we start from, right? This is not sometimes when we think about aging and a diagnosis, something such as Parkinson's, we think it's the older population, but aging is, like I said, all of us. Talk to us about this aging team concept and what that means.
Well, we all need support. And we can't do this alone. Just most about any problem in life, you of course have to deal with it on a day-to-day basis, but it's going to be a much easier road to walk down if you have a team of people. Some people will, lay the brick on your road. Some people will stand on the sideline and cheer. Other people will hand you, some water as you're walking along. It takes a team to really navigate the journey. So what that looks like is, first of all, realizing that you can't do this alone, and which is a really big thing for a lot of people. You need to draw in your friends, your family, the medical world, your spiritual world, and local resources to really help you tackle the day-to-day issues that pop up. Realize that you're not alone. One, for your own reassurance, and then two, who can you reach out to? Have an idea, actually think out, how can I get help? Or if I don't know the answer, who am I going to call?
Mm-hmm. I think families, especially when they have a new diagnosis, they may not have a lot of it's going to be a lot of shock that goes with that.
Yeah.
And with Parkinson's, we know it progresses, and there's some predictability to it, but there's a lot of variability as well.
100%.
What would be maybe someone who has a recent, or their loved one has a recent diagnosis? what would you recommend as first steps based on your, everything you've done in all of these healthcare settings, doing social work, but also, in relation to CAPS? What what would you advise families with a new diagnosis to do first or second?
Well, education is key, good and bad, and not just random education, really looking at organizations which focus, first of all, your national organizations like American Parkinson's Foundation or the Parkinson's Foundation or the Michael J. Fox, and realizing that they each have different roles in filling that education gap.
Mm-hmm.
So, because I think when you get a diagnosis, you're hungry, hungry, hungry for knowledge. But unfortunately, that can be dangerous.
Right. You don't want to just get on Google and
Right,
see what Google says. Go.
right, right. So, one of the first things I did when I took the role was sit down with our physician advisors and say, all right, where do you go for information? Reliable, evidence-based education. And they gave me 3 websites, and that's what I posted, and they serve different reasons. So the Michael J. Fox is really focused on research. So, you want to keep up on what's coming out, what's happening in the world, what's happening, maybe you yourself want to get tested, that kind of thing. Like they have all kinds of research. Maybe you want to be a part of clinical trials. They list all that type of information. Then you have resources like the Parkinson's Foundation, which has, what does this look like? What does it look like that impacts your speech? How does Parkinson's affect your motor skills? How does it affect your non-motor life? All of those kind of types of things. So just good, straight, basic information. Davis Finney is also research-based, but they really focus on how do you keep active? How do you live your life every single day? And different tips on that.
Nice.
So those are all national organizations. They don't have any feet on the ground here.
Mm-hmm.
So of course, humans, we want to interact. We're pack animals, right? So maybe you want to look someone in the eye and say, hey, what is this really like? What does this really feel like? How does this really impact your life? That's when you take advantage of support group or, that more regional learning that can occur. Or maybe you're down the line and you're interested, like you're just an in-person learner, not a, internet learner, which
Mm-hmm.
I think people my age and older are. Not only because we're pack animals, but we are very used to gathering information on, tangible physical level. Like I want to go to a class and write this down and figure this out. So that's where your resources like Capital Area Parkinson's fit in. Or you just need to know, like, hey, who's the good movement disorder neurologist in this area? That's the neurologist that specializes in Parkinson's. Or, you might hear, my husband's a military man, like they're used to information given in this way. Like, who's the best doctor? Who's the best fit for them? Because
like that.
Like, they're not going to do well with the 30-year-old physician who's just, so just different personalized resource seeking like that.
Mm-hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. You got to start with the big picture first.
Right.
And know that you can go back and that you're, one thing I talk to families related to aphasia often are you're going to process information differently at different points on your journey.
Yeah.
So go get some information, give it some time, go back, look some more, and then, look at your life and see where you're needing something specific and then seek out that particular piece.
Yep.
Let's talk about emotional well-being on some just a little tiny topic for our morning. How can let's take it from the perspective of maybe of families supporting the person with Parkinson's. How can families support the emotional well-being of someone who has diagnosis of Parkinson's?
I think the number one tip is to be respectful of where they're at that time. Because it's not going to be linear. It's not going to be, oh, I have Parkinson's. I need to XYZ. You have to adapt with them in a way and be respectful of where they're at. So I guess to spell it out, a lot of people it takes some time to absorb that diagnosis. You're going to be ready. All right, let's go to a support group. Let's go to socialization.
Yeah.
Let's go to physical therapy. Let's go to speech therapy. But, like you may be on fire to tackle this disease and they aren't. And that's going to be really, really challenging. Mm-hmm. And so as a care partner, you are going to be at their side. And it's okay if you move forward in the trajectory of how you want to tackle it. But remember not to bring your journey is very different from theirs. And I think that's the hardest thing for people. Either they're going, or maybe you're the one that's having a hard time absorbing it. And you're grieving that future life that you might have had with them. Whether it's going to actually materialize or not, because some people think, my spouse is now not going to be able to travel in a year or two, or they're not going to be able to communicate, or they're going to have to go live in a nursing home. And that's not necessarily true. But as a partner, you might get sucked into all those really negative emotions and bury your head in the sand. And the person with Parkinson's is actually more realistic about, we don't know what's going to happen. I'm just going to learn. I need to go to these groups. I need to go to my doctor. I need to figure this out. And as a care partner, just remember, walk alongside of them respectfully, be a support. And whether you're ahead of them or behind them in your own emotional journey, your journey is yours and theirs belongs to them.
Well, very well said. I appreciate that. And I also want to tap into when you said grieving. And I think families we think of grieving in general, somebody dies, right? That's how we think of grief. But grief is multifaceted. And when you have some kind of a change, such as a diagnosis or a change in your physical well-being, whatever that is, there is a process, there is time that is needed to reconcile that. Is it reconcile? I don't know if that's the right word, but you have to cope with it and you have to grieve it. And, doesn't mean the sky is falling necessarily,
right.
But you have to still sit with it.
Right. Absolutely. Absolutely.
And I think as professionals working with whatever diagnosis, we have to help families recognize maybe that they are in a grieving process and to tell them that it's okay. Give them permission to work through that and maybe give them some tools.
Absolutely.
So Parkinson's, what you're doing at CAPS, you have the emotional, mental, support groups. Do you have the respite groups, the Shake Shack, which is a fun name. I'm wondering if there's a story behind how that name came about. Is there?
Absolutely. We had a president with Parkinson's disease, Victor Becker, who we just started a big fund for as well. Amazing gentleman. He was the first person with Parkinson's on our board. And we started Shake Shack under his tenure. And so when he and another social worker, Ariel Rosenbaum, were kind of envisioning what they wanted to look like, he said, we don't need to be heavy. Like, this is supposed to be fun. Like, you can laugh at Parkinson's and we're going to do it. So this is what we're going to name it. And he actually went and spoke to the Shake Shack restaurants, obtained permission, and that's what we call them. So
I love it. I think humor is another one of those coping mechanisms. Name it to tame it, right? The Shake Shack. Not everybody with Parkinson's has the shakes. Some
Right.
present
Everybody has the
differently.
treats, right.
But that's neat. But the Shake Shack is the respite program for cats.
Mm-hmm. Well, yes, respite.
I'm sure it's so much more than that. Tell us again.
It's respite / socialization. So for the person with Parkinson's, and a lot of times their spouse, they come as well. It is a time to be in society and company of other people with Parkinson's. We have 3 in Austin. Each one is different, but the programming is always targeted to the Parkinson's population. So what that means is that the Austin Shake Shack, the Central Austin, we usually have a speaker who talks on some type of topic related to Parkinson's. For instance, last Friday, it was on anxiety and depression, which is a non-motor symptom that very, very frequently accompanies Parkinson's disease and the Parkinson's diagnosis, because you don't have enough dopamine. Your brain chemicals are not in the right place or at the right levels. In Lakeway Shake Shack, we have a physical therapist-led exercise that occurs. They specifically work the exercises in that hour to benefit those with Parkinson's, meaning bigger movements, louder movements. Yep. And then at South Shake Shack, we have a program called Yes and Exercise. And it's not exercise, it's actually improv. It's an evidence-based improv. Yes, think comedy, but also kind of thinking on your feet for an hour where you're in different scenarios that you're using improv, which is great mental gymnastics for people with Parkinson's to help maintain where you're at.
That is awesome. I love that.
Yeah.
I love that. I'm certified in 2 of the different speech pathology methods for treating voice. And I lean towards the program that challenges the thinking, because doing 2 things at once is challenging. And we need to work on that for normal aging, a diagnosis with aging, and all of that. So I love that. Yes, and that's neat. Love that. So let's go back to adapting at different stages. We talked a little bit about like a newer diagnosis, and you painted a really nice picture about how the care partner and the person with the diagnosis might be on different trajectories, different timing. What about when there's more challenges, more physical challenges, safety challenges? How can families, and I think of it as a whole, because everything needs to be holistic, when there's like a safety need, somebody's falling more or can't, they need to have someone with them at all the time, or monitored, or whatever the case may be, but yet the person, either one in the family, is resistant to that. Another lightweight topic for you, Christi, on our morning talk. But it's a real thing that families can be facing.
Yes, absolutely. This is how I advise families on that. If your person is not listening, identify in their life who they do listen to. For instance, the older generation, they listen to their doctors. If their doctor tells them to do something, they do it. And I mean, it is in stone.
You're right.
Maybe it's a female and she listens to her oldest son. Like, that's her person. Or maybe, they listen to their best friend. I tell people, like, they really think about who they listen to, because it's just like any other part of life that, influence comes from different places, and you have to think about who they're listening to and get them on your team. Because if they're following, it's usually pretty easy. So if it's the physician that dad's going to listen to, then call the physician before the appointment and tell them what's going on. And you might be thinking, well, that's HIPAA. No, you can share anything that's going on in writing or verbally with the nurse or whoever. Now, they can't share back with you what the person's diagnosis is, their vitals, any of their medical information. But the flow of information of you to them is completely open.
I love that point. So smart.
Yeah.
To say that.
Yeah. Then start having conversations now are coming up. It is time to start having conversations now. Even if there is nothing going on in your family, having some basic conversations about, how do you want to age? Where? Whether you have a diagnosis or not. Like, what's your plan? What is your plan? Where are you? Where are you in your journey? Or have you thought about this at all? Because we don't want to be acting in a crisis situation.
I love the words you chose. How do you want to age? Because that's kind of non-confrontational, right? It's just, it's an open-ended question. It's inquisitive. It's, curiosity. I love that. Yeah. Because I also think for families that are navigating, again, whatever the diagnosis is, sometimes they just need words. They need to get ideas of words they can say and then make it their own.
Right.
So powerful. And yeah.
It's astounding what you'll find, because with my own parents, the answer was completely different. My father,
what you expected?
My father literally said, "Oh, my daughters are going to take care of me." And my mother said, "I don't want my children to be a burden to my children. So, I've gotten a long-term care insurance policy, and, we're going to move to a smaller house." My parents were on completely different pages, despite having been married for 60 years. Somehow or other, they had not had a conversation between themselves. And when I asked them this question, they looked at each other like, oh, maybe we need to talk.
Maybe I should start by talking to.
Yes, please do, because I don't want to be making decisions for you, and you don't want me making decisions for you.
Yeah. Because that kind of brings me around to one of my missions in the families that I work with, is getting your legal stuff put into place.
Yep.
People your medical, your durable power of attorney, those conversations are not fun. But if we could take some of the power or the fear of those legal documents and say, honey, how do you want to age?
Yeah.
Wow. I think that's a really powerful statement, that if the audience only gets one takeaway, I think it's those words, and to have that conversation, because like you said, I love that you also said the holidays. This is when people start getting together. This is when they start having the phone calls, making the plans. And maybe it's less threatening to do it over the phone versus in person, where it could be confrontational.
Yep.
Any other tips, strategies, anything else we can think about to help families kind of navigate this topic? Because it's not just having an aging team, it's having an aging plan.
Yeah.
And knowing it can change.
It's really scary and can be very, very overwhelming. So remember that Rome does not have to be built in a day. It's a process, not a task, and it's going to be changing constantly. So just figure out what are the basics. Let's get the basics done.
Yeah.
Let's think over these holidays what you want. Let's think on this, because the answers are going to vary, and then it's like a decision tree. Different answers are going to lead to different actions. on your part or
Absolutely.
your parents' part,
Absolutely. Neat.
or the other way, flowing the other way, because there are a lot of parents who are caring for kids these days, a lot, either in the Parkinson space or others.
Great point.
Yep.
That is a great point. Right. Somebody in their 30s and 40s may not be thinking about aging and what they want, they're just revving up.
Yep. Yep.
So, Christy, I would love to wrap up our episode and give the audience a challenge, something to think about, something that's tangible that they can take away and do something with.
Mm-hmm.
What would you like that action step to be?
I would like that action step to be to have a conversation when your whole family's together about what life looks like, what aging looks like.
Okay.
Like make sure it happens either Thanksgiving or Christmas. And you don't have to get answers at that time, but just say, what does it look like for you? How do we start planning this? Because we don't want to be in crisis. We don't want to be making decisions as the hurricane is hitting during
Sure.
the healthcare crisis, which, may or may not come. But, what are we looking at? Who do you think? How do you think you're going to age?
Yeah. And maybe there's some
from there.
misconceptions that or more information needs to be gathered.
Yep.
We all have preconceived notions about different things, but there's lots of resources. And again, for the audience that's listening, one thing I've tried to do with this podcast is pull together those resources and have the conversations with the professionals in all of these different areas so you can get more information, so you can have accurate information to move forward, whether it's hiring caregivers or managing your legal documents, whatever the case may be. Just got to start the conversation.
Yep. Start the conversation.
Well, Christy, it has been a pleasure to have this conversation with you. I love the work you're doing at Capital Area Parkinson Society here in Austin. You've pulled together amazing resources that people can access online. And for those that are geographically in this area, definitely check out CAPS online. You can see the website address in the show notes. Any final thoughts before we go, Christy?
I look forward to seeing you via email or in person.
Yeah, I think that's great. And I love your accessibility.
Yeah.
That's terrific. Thank you so much, Christy. I hope you have an amazing day. Folks, have a wonderful week, and we will see you next time.
Thanks for tuning in to the Listen for Life podcast. We hope you feel empowered and supported. Head over to listenforlifepodcast.com to see the show notes with links and information from today's episode. Do you have a topic, a resource to share, or a guest recommendation? Inquiring minds want to know. Let us know in the comments section. Wishing you a fabulous week.